Chairman, we are now live.
Excellent. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Lee Dillon, the leader of West Berkshire Council, and welcome to today's executive meeting on Thursday, the 14th of December. So item 1 is apologies for absence, please, Madam Clerk.
We've got apologies from officers Paul Coe and Joseph Holmes.
So thank you. Item 2 are the minutes. Any questions or comments on the minutes before? Yes, please, Councillor Culver.
Thank you very much, Leader. There was a comment I made about the Draft Busters scheme, and the minutes say that I urged the administration to back it. What I actually said was slightly more nuanced than that. I said I urged the administration to have more ambition than the Draft Busters programme, because only 2 loft hatches actually got dealt with as a result of that. So I can understand how the clerk might have misinterpreted that, but I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you, Leader. And also, when I talked about Monks Lane an hour into the meeting, I did mention the planning meetings that had happened in the past about that development, but I also mentioned a number of other issues that had raised concerns in my mind as chair of scrutiny. So I just wanted to reinforce that for everyone's benefit. It's not just a planning issue that scrutiny are concerned about, it's a range of issues. Okay. Thank you, Leader.
Are there any specific issues that you want reflected in the minutes, Councillor Culver?
I think I mentioned at the meeting about the High Court and value for money, and also whether we'd learnt all of the lessons from the LRIE task and finish group from 2020. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll get the minutes amended to include those additions. Anybody else have any comments or questions on the minutes? No. So if I propose from the chair that we accept those minutes, Councillor Brooks, do you second that? Thank you. And exec members in favour, please. Thank you. And that's carried. I will sign those minutes. Okay, item 3, declarations of interest. Clerk, do we have any declarations of interest, please?
I've not been notified of any known, Leader.
And any from the floor? No. Excellent. Okay, item 4 is public questions. So I'd like to thank all members of the public who have submitted questions for this evening's executive, and welcome those of you in attendance to hear the answer to your question and then to ask a supplementary question if you have one. Your question will appear on the screen and will be answered by the relevant portfolio holder. You'll then be given the opportunity to ask the supplementary question, but please remember it must clarify the response provided and not introduce any new business. In accordance with the Constitution, where questioners have more than one question, only their first question will be answered. If all other first questions have been asked and answered and there is sufficient time, we will answer subsequent questions. Given that we have questions A to M on the agenda, I'm confident that we will get through them all. So if we can move them, please, to question, question A is a written answer actually from Mr. Hall. So we move to question B, which is a question from Mr. Pearce to be answered by Councillor Colston, please.
Good evening, Mr. Pearce. Thank you for your question. And the answer is no. The regeneration programme review sets out the council's ambitions for Bond Riverside from a landowner perspective, and sets out how we aim to bring forward investment in the site. Before any specific development is authorised through the planning process, it will need to satisfy planning and drainage policy around flooding and runoff, and therefore calculations will be undertaken and suitable mitigations proposed through any planning applications. Do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, thank you for your answer. Okay. That was quite a clear no. Those 3 questions with the flow rates and the runoff are really important, and they will need to be answered before any plan permission can be approved on the estate. But no, I don't have a supplementary, so thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question.
Thank you, Mr. Pearce. We move on to question C. Do we have Mrs. Saunderson available on Zoom?
She is in the room.
Excellent. So Councillor Gawley will answer your question, Ms. Sanderson. Councillor Gawley.
Good evening, Ms. Saunderson, and thank you for your question. The devastating floods in 2007 affected pretty much every parish and parish in the district to a greater or lesser extent. The impact was unprecedented. Since this event, the council has bid and invested tens of millions of pounds on flood defences throughout the district, concentrating on those areas that were most affected. The council has also not only invested in infrastructure, but it has helped develop flood forums and a network of flood wardens, all of which helps raise awareness and improve our resilience to the impact of flooding. Do you have a supplementary question?
No, thank you.
Thank you. We move then on to question D. Do we have Councillor Pike on Zoom?
Councillor Pike is in the room.
Lovely. Okay, so that question will be answered by Councillor Gaines, please.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Mr. Pike, for this. Councillor Pike, for this question. I know you have a vested interest in this particular question, and it's been something you've actually felt quite strongly about. But unfortunately, the experimental traffic restriction on Lawrence Lane has not been a success so far. The restriction was intended to prevent through traffic from using the lane to create a safer and more pleasant environment for pedestrians and cyclists, while maintaining access to adjacent properties. In practice, too many drivers ignored the restriction, and the bollards that were installed to reinforce it were repeatedly vandalised and stolen. This means that this meant that the lane was in fact no safer for pedestrians and cyclists, and the continued need to replace the bollards has caused ongoing pressures for budget and staff time. It is in its current form, the restriction can therefore not be made permanent. We do, however, intend to introduce a new restriction complemented by appropriate physical measures, possibly on an experimental base again, that will be better respected and achieve the results that we all want. We're still working on the details, but we will, of course, consult users, residents and other stakeholders when we have a firm proposal. I will also keep you and the Thatcham Town Council fully informed. Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you. So firstly, I have to apologise that Zoom has incorrectly attributed me to being from Thatcham Town Council. This question is being asked in a personal capacity, though I have interest in this with several hats. So my supplementary question is, since Lawrence's Lane is in many places only 2.7 metres wide and that section is nearly a kilometre long, would you agree that it's not possible for vehicles to pass on it, and it's not safe for a vehicle to pass a pedestrian, a cyclist, or particularly an equestrian, and therefore that some measures are required in order to make the road safe for all types of road user? Thank you.
I'm not a highways expert, Mr. Pike, but actually, as I've said, we will actually be looking at other measures to make that road much safer, and I will keep you informed of that progress.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pike. Thank you, Councillor Gaines. Move on to question E, which is by Mrs. Dobson, who's in the room, and it's going to be answered by Councillor Brooks. When it comes to ask you, next I was going to say put the red light on, but yeah.
Hello, Mrs. Dobson.
Hello.
It's been a long road.
It sure has.
So we're beginning, after an awful lot of investigation, that I've shared a lot of that with you, to put right the wrong seal collection processes for residents. You, in fact, have had some communication this week about that. The seal collection process, it's overcomplicated. The legislation is very poorly drafted, heavily regulated. So we are unpicking this, and we're doing that by having taken some consultants on from the Planning Officers Society. They've already been here. They're looking at how we do this. They're looking at making sure we get this right going forward. So they're reviewing the seal approach being taken by the council. We think we'll be completed by the early part of spring. We will look to see if we need to change policies to make it easier for householders like yourself and quite a few others to be exempt from these seal charges, which, as you know, and I know, and most fair-minded people know in the country, were totally unsuitable. So we'll take those forward. We'll keep you informed. I will be in touch with you myself, as I have been for months and months. And there's not much more I can say, otherwise give you assurance that you've trailblazed in a way, Mrs. Dobson, and I'm hoping that your experience will make sure that it doesn't happen to other people. Have you got a supplementary for me?
Yes, I do, and it's basically regarding the correspondence that was received this week. So this is my supplementary. And what I'd like to say is, although I have received an apology for how my case was handled, why was I not afforded a further review of the actual CIL payment as you have done with the Lambourne case, particularly as nothing has changed since the original paperwork was first submitted on both cases? And it would appear that the council is still treating people very differently. That's my question.
I hear what you say, and I know the case you're referring to, of course. I'm not going to talk about it here. But they weren't a true comparison of like for like. That's not me squirming around here, but it is me actually saying, I don't think we can compare the two like for like. But I will be in touch with you. And that's not much more I can say than that. So I hope you will take my assurance that we will continue to discuss this.
Thank you, Mr. Dobson. Do we have Miss Alison May available on Zoom?
Unfortunately, it seems that Alison is not in the room.
Okay, so we'll hold that question over until the end of questioning, and if she's there, then we'll answer it at that time. Otherwise, we will provide a written answer. Do we have Mr. Morgan available on Zoom?
Mr. Morgan's in the room.
Excellent. So, Councillor Lewis, if you could please answer question G in Mr. Morgan's name. We got Councillor Lewis. She should be available on Zoom.
Unfortunately, I've been trying to promote Councillor Lewis, but she doesn't seem to be accepting.
Okay, Mel, if you could try and get hold of Councillor Lewis for us. Mr. Morgan, we'll get Councillor Lewis promoted into the room, and then we'll come back to you for your question, sir. Apologies about that.
Okay.
Okay, so moving back to the room then, question I is Mr. Pearce, to be answered by Councillor Colston, please.
Hi, thanks for this question as well. The foul water infrastructure is the responsibility of Thames Water, and it's for them to identify any gaps in that infrastructure. And the council will then support this through the statutory planning process. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you for your answer. I ask this question because if you're short of millions of pounds worth of surface water infrastructure on the London Road Industrial Estate, Thames Water won't be able to get their planning permission through to build the foul sewer infrastructure, which could hold up a place like Sandford and things in the local plan. So that's why I asked the question, but I don't require an answer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pearce.
Thank you.
Could we bring Ms. Saunderson back into the Zoom room, please?
Miss Saunderson is in the room.
Thank you, Ben. So, Mr. Councillor Gawley, if you could answer Ms. Saunderson's question, please.
Yep, thank you again for your question, Ms. Saunderson. The council manages the impact of flooding on a risk-based approach. The flooding in 2013, 2014 was mainly because of high groundwater, which directly led to flooding, but also did lead to high river levels, which in turn had a severe impact. The areas impacted in 2013, 2014 all tend to be those in areas at high risk of flooding. And I can confirm that all these areas have had some investment in flood measures in the last 10 years, whether as a direct response to the event in 2014 or as a result of further investigation in the intervening time. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. So are you saying that the Newbury Area 11 map 102 has had investigation in the last 10 years?
You're going to have to remind me what 102 is. I think I know the map, but
I think you know, as the new chairman of the new Newbury Flood and Drainage Forum, it is the area that is at most risk at the moment from the high river levels of the River Lambourne, which is the top of Newport Road, bits of Kiln Road, Riverside Lane and River Walk and Walton Way.
All of the houses that had internal flooding in 2014 were sent letters to invite them to apply for property level protection. I believe 6 took up the opportunity, and obviously we've we've spoken in the interim, and we are going to be arranging a meeting with the EA along the River Lambourne in that area to look at the state of the banks and whether or not any remedial work needs to be done, and then work with riparian owners to do so.
Fine. So 6 took up PLP and the investigations are now starting. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We come back to the room. So Mr. Pearce's question, L, to be answered by Councillor Colston, please.
Thank you again for your question. The answer to this one is also no. A key element of the programme review is that football will continue to be played on site rather than redeveloping the football ground, a new football ground. Any potential future applications to enhance that sporting provision on the ground will be subject to planning permission, as with other things, and it will have to satisfy the relevant requirements then, including the one that you put forward in the question.
Thank you for your answer. That's another no. The opportunity to use the pitch for flood mitigation with drainage crates, and I appreciate because the water table is so high, you might only have a small amount. It may not be practical to do it, but surely that should be investigated before the Bond Riverside Regeneration Review comes back. When it comes back, would you not agree that this time it needs to be right?
So I think we have a difference of opinion on the legality and position on this, and our approach is about what's the word? A step-by-step development, and each one needing to adhere to the planning laws when it comes forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Colston. Thank you, Mr. Pearce.
Thank you.
So have we got Mr. Morgan in the room as well? Because I know we now have Councillor Lewis.
Mr. Morgan is still in the room.
Excellent. So apologies for that delay, Mr. Morgan. We have Councillor Lewis with us. So this is question G, if we can get that on the screen. Excellent. So Councillor Lewis to provide an answer to Mr. Morgan, please.
Thank you. And can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I can
Fabulous.
hear you.
Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Morgan, and a good evening to you. Thank you for your question.
Okay.
Just to answer it for you, trenching and pipe work for the foul water connection costs £10,000. The trenching and pipe work for the clean water connection cost £26,000. The electric supply connection work cost £4,500. The 4-metre high perimeter fencing and palisade fencing cost £110,000. And all of these were procured through the council's term contract, which has been subject to a full competitive procurement exercise. The pitch preparation and goalposts cost £10,000, which were carried out through the council's grounds maintenance contract, which again is a competitively tendered contract. £4,500 was paid to Thames Water for the foul and clean water connections. The porter cabin changing rooms cost £20,000, which was purchased from a specialist second-hand porter cabin provider called Britcab. There is no business case. This was a manifesto pledge endorsed by the public of West Berkshire. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's a very comprehensive response. Thank you for that, Councillor Lewis. What would be very useful, and could you ask my supplementary questions, could you provide the scope of works for some of these elements of costs you've just outlined? For example, you said £110,000 for the fencing. Could you provide a breakdown of what actually is provided for that £110,000? If you can do that, that'd be great. And similarly on the pitch renovation, if you can give a scope of works, which we can actually look at what we get for that money, that would be very welcome. So if you can do that, I'd be very grateful.
Fabulous. We shall arrange that for you, Mr. Morgan.
Very kind of you. Thank you very much, Councillor Lewis.
Excellent. Thank you all. And then just one last call to see if Mrs. May has joined the meeting.
Unfortunately not.
No. Okay, so we'll provide question F as a written answer. Obviously doesn't like hearing from my answers. That's 2 execs on the trot now. Okay, moving on then to to question M. So Mrs. Saunderson to be answered by Councillor Macro, please.
Thank you for your question. It's good. Public health responsibilities do not include social care. So it's not a responsibility of the Director of Public Health to scrutinise the delivery of adult social care. That said, I think we all recognise this area is complex, multi-agency landscape in which many organisations overlap and interact. This includes health commissioners, health providers, local authorities, social care, public health professionals, voluntary sector, independent social care providers, etc. Cooperation and collaboration between these is key to the successful delivery of services. Sometimes it also includes constructive challenge. In terms of scrutiny, adult social care, like the Integrated Care Board, reports periodically to the Health and Wellbeing Board and to the Health Scrutiny Committee, and responds when there is an issue requiring more investigation. In addition, there are a number of adult social care priorities monitored as part of the Council Strategy Delivery Plan. You may also be aware that the inspection regime undertaken by the Care Quality Commission is being extended to cover the core adult social care functions of local authorities. On that basis, I'm confident there is sufficient oversight of adult social care functions. I also expect the close working relationships between adult social care, public health and other partners to continue. Do you have a supplementary, please?
Yes, I do, because many councils have adult social care with health scrutiny. And one of them, I get confused between the health scrutiny and the Health and Wellbeing Board, because a question I raised 3 years ago about the poor rates of continuous healthcare provision in Berkshire West has now moved from the Health and Wellbeing Board to health scrutiny, at which we cannot ask public questions. So, Councillor Macro, may I ask you to have a look at to see whether this suits the public being able to raise issues in this field of our interest?
Well, the public can raise questions at the Health and Wellbeing Board, so that facility is already there.
The investigation into continuing healthcare
Councillor Sanders,
has moved to a different board that I can no longer, a different body that I can no longer ask questions to.
So, Mr. Sanderson, I think, yeah, we'll take that away to ensure
take that away, please, and just have a look.
Different bodies can be scrutinised appropriately via public questions, yeah. Okay, moving on to item 5, which is petitions. Are there any petitions, please, Madam Clerk?
No, I've not received any petitions.
Thank you. Okay, item 6 then is the capital financing report for the financial year 23-24, quarter 2. Just before I ask Councillor Cottenham to introduce this report, just to note that this did have a thorough airing at the recent scrutiny committee as well. So, Councillor Cottenham, can you propose the report, please?
Yes, I will propose the report.
Thank you. I'm happy to second that from the chair. And then over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. So, as you just stated, we've discussed this previously, but still would like just to give a couple of salient points regarding the report. So, firstly, as you can see, we've underspent 15.4 million so far year to date, of which there'll be reprofiling later on the year of 10.7 million. Within that sort of programme, what's been spent is the refugee housing for Afghan and Ukraine in the borough. So that is progressing, which will alleviate that housing need. This report asks us to approve the capitalisation of Microsoft software. The knock-on effect of the deferment of reprofiling of underspend, there is a financial benefit in 24-25 regarding the MRP, i.e. what happens when we borrow this year, we take the MRP hit the next year. That's okay, yes, is a financial benefit to us. However, that sort of indicates that we really don't have the resources to be able to match our ambition. So within the report, it quite clearly states that in 7.1, we have a very ambitious capital programme, but at the moment, we don't necessarily have the resources to be able to deliver that. But also from a risk-based approach as well, we in 7.3, we endeavour where we can to have internal borrowing to reduce our risk. And also in 7.7, it gives a description of where we are with the liability benchmark. So the good news is we're within that criteria of the liability benchmark. And as I say, we try to do as much as we possibly can with internal borrowing, especially with the Public Works Loan Board rate, roughly 5.5% at the moment. Hence, as I say, the strategy of getting as much internal capital receipts to be able to pay for our capital programme, hence the internal borrowing. Any questions?
Thank you. Members of the executive, any questions or comments? No. Members opposite? No. Councillor Abbs, please.
Yeah, just a little one. You mentioned Microsoft Core licenses, but I understood the council's moving to Office 365, which is a subscription model. So when you say core licenses, which ones are referring to? It doesn't seem to be in the document here.
Yeah,
it just says core licenses.
Yeah, I would have to. Sorry, I'd have to come back to you, but I would guess it would be the likes of Teams, which we've got at the moment. But I would have to come back to you
if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah,
I'll
come back to
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Abbs. Okay, so members are asked to note that the Q2 underspend position of 15.4 million and reprofiling proposals of 10.7 million. As in Appendix C. Also to note the budget changes, including the Q2 position detailed in Appendix A. And then members are also asked to approve the transfer of 146k of software licenses costs from the current ICT revenue budget, and that the council already capitalises core Microsoft licenses. Can I see a show of hands in favour of those, please? Thank you, that's carried. Okay, moving on to item 7, which is the 23-24 revenue financial performance Q2 report. Again, this one was debated at the scrutiny committee. So those watching from home, if they don't see questions from opposition colleagues, that's because they have asked them at scrutiny. And so I'd suggest that members of the public interested have a look at the scrutiny video, and then they'll be able to see the accountability from the opposition to the administration as well. So, Councillor Cottingham, will you propose that report, please?
I will propose it.
Okay, thank you. These are only to note, but I will second that and then ask you to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So again, this report has been previously scrutinised, but I will give some headlines as well. So as you can see, the main good news is in Q2, there has been a reduction in the projected overspend of 3 million down to 3.3 million. Which against our reserves of 7.2 million, we're not out of the woods regarding the financial security of West Berkshire, but as I say, the direction of travel is in a positive way. The main sort of issues, pressures, as we've discussed previously, concern adult social care and children and family services. So within the report 5.12, we can see an increase of 2.4 million adult social care and 5.18 showing 3.7 million increase in children and family services. What I would say, the recruitment of new officer Anne-Marie Dodds has definitely had a sea change with regarding children and family services. So there's been an increase from my perspective in the forensic analysis of children and family services, improving what one of my sort of key measures is this financial efficiency of making sure we're getting the best value of services at the lowest possible cost. Also within the report, we see within education a 2.6 million increase. Majority of that is the home to school transport. That we're looking at next year as well to reduce the exposure, the cost pressure of home to school transport within West Berkshire. On the flip side of savings, we have projected just under 3 million regarding MRP provision. So this is, I think, coming next week to wider council, where we'll have a further discussion. So basically, this is where we provided for the capital repayment of our loans. So we have a paper showing that we have an opportunity to unwind some of the previous revenue cost against that. Also, as I said earlier, we have the weekly FRP meeting, which is delivered significant financial benefit, not least the reduction in agency costs. And there is an annualized saving to date of roughly 2 million. So we're actually improving the number of agency staff going to be recruited as permanent and reducing our dependency. Earlier today, we did actually ask at the committee just to track that there has been no detriment in the quality of service being provided. So it's all well and good cutting agencies, but if we're cutting our core services, that's not what we want to do. It's a case of making sure we're getting that balance between getting best value for money and making sure we're not having any degradation in the quality of services which we're providing to the residents of West Berkshire. Thank you.
So, thank you, Councillor Cottenham. Any questions from members opposite? Councillor McKinnon, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Cottingham. It's good to see that the forecast overspend is coming down.
Yeah.
And I don't want to come all over Roy Keane on Sky Sports to say that's your job. That's your job, but well done. It's good to see that it's coming down. This is a Q2 update, and I just wonder, are there any significant developments since this has been prepared which might cause you to cast doubt on the actual final outturn forecast?
I haven't been made aware of any black swan events which will make us going off course at the projected 3.3 million. Hopefully, as I said, with the work which we're doing, that 3.3 million overspend will be less than that, hopefully.
I'm somewhat surprised to hear you say that, given that we know that the local plan is forecast to be withdrawn on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And that report makes clear the significant cost that will be involved there. Does that not factor into the outturn? I know it doesn't at Q2, but surely that's going to affect the final position at the end of the year.
The advice we've been given is the projected potential spend wouldn't be until 24-25. So at the moment, we're not envisaging any extra spend this current financial year.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions from members opposite? No. Okay, thank you. As I said, the recommendations in this report are just to note, but it's to note the 3.3 million forecast overspend, a reduction of 3 million from Q1, to note the implementation of the measures in the report around recruitment staff in an agency, and to note the continuation of the financial review panel. Can I see? So we don't need to vote on that because it's just to note, sorry. So I will move us on. We move therefore on to item 8, which is the 23-24 performance quarter performance report for Q2. Councillor Brooks, please, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Leader. I was really impressed with how Catalin Bogos had done an awful lot of work to be able to produce the wheel on page 78, which is a direct input of all these performance indicators against our strategy. And he did that really rapidly. And as he put them in and as he assessed them, he described and explained to me, this is not subjective. This goes into our BI, business intelligence product in phase, and we are able then to plot these into our strategy. And so when you look at page 78, there's a lot of green there, which is great. And I'll talk about the amber a bit later. But I draw your attention to page 79 and some good things going on. So strong results were secured regarding adult social care safeguarding, with 71% of safeguarding outcomes being fully achieved, and where a risk was identified was reduced in 95% of cases. This is noteworthy, and you can easily see it in your mind because of the numbers and the percentages. We're supporting more vulnerable adults. That's 65% of our care leavers, age 90 to 21, benefiting from employment. We've got challenges in fostering. I'll come back to that. We're moving with good speed, I feel, towards our carbon neutrality target as outlined in 5.31. And overall, I see some really good progress. You take, for instance, staff turnover. That's already down to about 12.5%. It's been running at 17 to 18%. And this is improvement that I think is coming from a number of ways. One, I'm hoping staff are getting more comfortable. We've got a grip on the finances and the threats and stresses around that. They can see that we are taking a real interest. And let me explain, and I don't want to go on too long, you won't let me, but this is important. We've surveyed all the staff to develop an employee value proposition. In other words, what's good about working here, what's not good about working here. We've had 400 replies, a weight of data that we can unpick in many different ways. We've had lots of good comments about this authority, and we've had some not so good comments, but that's good because we can respond to those. And so we're getting a grip on our staff, I think, in terms of staff retention, staff turnover. That can only be good for the authority. There are areas that will challenge us. And they're in 4.6. They're either amber or red, so I'll draw attention to them before anybody else in the room might do so. Fostering households, I mentioned earlier. You've got challenges there. There's over 7,000 fostering homes needed nationally. We have a pressure there. We need to improve our timeliness decisions on new claims for housing benefits. I'll be looking at that very closely with Councillor Cottingham. We can improve a little bit on the EV on-street charging points. There was a delay before Councillor Abbs might mention it. There was a delay in the supplier signing the contract for the responsive bus service. And there's some work to do on the partnership agreement and common trust. All of these are identified. All of these we can tackle. Overall, I'm very pleased where we are now, Leader. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brooks. As I said, this is to note, so it doesn't need a second or a vote. So members of the executive, Councillor Codlin first, and then Councillor Colston, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to come back on what Councillor Brooks was saying about fostering, but actually by the end of October, I know that's slightly later, but we actually have recruited 13 new foster carers or families, and I believe there's almost as many in process at the moment. We may lose a few of those, but the process that we're going through and the promotion of foster caring locally is definitely paying dividends.
Thank you for that, Councillor Colston. Councillor Codlin, Councillor Colston, please.
You're right first time, Leader. Thank you. I just wanted to say a couple of things in my area on the strategy. We held the Rural Business Forum as planned last month, which resulted in a lot of good networking, and we've had 2 days of site visits, myself and Councillor Vickers, with various officers to follow those up. And I'm very pleased that we're working together in partnership with a number of rural estates and others to help promote rural employment and other benefits for the rural areas. And also pleased with progress on the town centre steering groups, which are working well to decide the priorities within the town centre strategies. And in fact, Hungerford's meeting tonight. But thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Councillor Gaines, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to sort of mention the demand responsive bus. It was delayed slightly for the delivery, but we are getting it out there, and it's going to be launched on the 15th of January for the east of the district, which is wonderful news. It's a bit later than this report, but nevertheless, it's there.
Thank you for that. So don't see any other comments from exec members, so I'll go to opposition colleagues. Councillor McKinnon, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Brooks, for that summary. These papers here, when they come to executive, I always remember when we were on the executive, we always had to prepare very carefully for this, because it's a great opportunity for the opposition and for the public, for administration members as well, to really see the performance of the executive. And I remember that we prepared comprehensive tables. We had huge big lists of those KPIs in there, and line by line, you could go down and scrutinise those. Now, I think this is the first time that that you guys, as a Liberal Democrat administration, have published a performance report. I think not unreasonably in Q1, you were working out how exactly you wanted to do it. But I do lament the absence of a comprehensive list of those KPIs, because it makes it very, very difficult to scrutinise. What's included in the narrative is really what you want to include. But if I want to have a nice little scroll down and see what's red, what's amber, what's green, I'm not able to do that. So I'm just wondering why you made that change, because it does seem to make scrutiny a bit harder to do. That's my first question.
Councillor Brooks, if you come back on that one for us.
I don't think it's difficult to see it on page 75, 4.6, the ambers or reds. We're not hiding those, and I think that's critical. We can give you pages and pages and pages of greens if you want them. But I remember being where you're sitting, one down, because the leader normally sat there, and going straight to the reds and the ambers. Management it by exception. If you want all the greens, we'll give you a table of all the greens. But I think you might want to concentrate the ambers and reds, which I'm drawing attention to, taken on the chin, are already improving. So that's sort of where I'm at. I'm not saying we wouldn't give it, probably in an appendix, but if most of them are green, as we expect them to be, how does that help you?
Well, thank you for that answer. The problem I've got with that is that 4.6 does not list all of the ambers and reds. It's of the measures rated amber or red, a number of areas to highlight include. This is a selected set of reds and ambers, so I'm not happy with that answer, Councillor Brooks, but it looks like you want to come back on me.
Yeah, I do really, because there is a link in this to some significant information within InPhase that gives you all of what you're looking for, okay? And I am trying to get these reports down in size, and I'm struggling to achieve that across the board in governance terms. But this one, I'm starting to make some progress, because you refer to that link, which takes you into InPhase, and that's like your appendix. So I don't think we're hiding anything here. That's not our way. I don't really want to go back to the old paper-driven pages and pages of landscape documents saying that's green, that's green, that's green, that's amber. We told you that in the exec summary. You can click through here to have a look at it in more detail. It's all there, Councillor McKinnon.
Okay, the InPhase data, I was looking at that this afternoon, and you're quite right. That is where the detailed list of KPIs are. I don't think you are trying to hide scrutiny. I don't think that's the case. However, on looking at that performance portal this afternoon, there are 167 KPIs listed on that portal. 73 of them, that's 44%, are blank, and they tell me that they're awaiting data. So I am not able to scrutinise at least half of those KPIs at all. And I don't think that's good enough, Councillor Brooks. And I would ask you if you do think that's good enough.
I'll take that away. I was well aware of that, and I'm not comfortable with that. So in that respect, I think we're in some degree of agreement. It's gathering the data, and we've got to look at that. But I'm not going to go back to all the lists, but I'm going to reduce the 44. How about that?
Well, please do, because for those 44%, I've not been able to scrutinise at all, and I'm sure that's not the intention of the administration, and I think it should be put right as soon as you can.
I think hadn't counted how many didn't have data in previous quarterly reports, but there are always reasons, because some of them are annual targets, for example, and it was always the case that performance reports came forward where it said no data, because it wasn't at that point, it was either half yearly data or quarter or yearly data. So there will always be times where there's not data because it's collated on a different time basis than the quarterly reports are produced as well.
I think, Leader, I take that point, and I think when we are scrutinising those KPIs, as I'm sure you're happy with us doing it, if you could be clear on that InPhase portal, the reason, that would be very, very helpful.
No, I'd absolutely agree with that, Councillor McKinnon, actually. Another question, please. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, just on that. There is one KPI which is a red. It's not on your 4.6, but it's about the percentage of parents receiving support from the early response hub reporting that their concerns had reduced. I think the target is 65%. We're sitting at 46.9. So this may be one that you want to hand off onto a colleague, Councillor Brooks, but I just wanted to know the reason for that red.
I will look to the portfolio holder if I may, but if we need to come back to you, I'm sure you'll have the answer.
No, that's fine. Councillor Codling might want to come back to me.
Yeah, Councillor Codling, or to provide a written response. Are you happy to answer?
I think it's just that some cases may need to be open for longer than what we would expect normally. But I will get back to you on that one, find out some more.
Thank you, Councillor Codling. And finally from me, Leader, there is a planned KPI on there which says to adopt the West Berkshire local plan. I wonder if that needs to be updated in light of what's happening on Tuesday.
Well, this is for Q2, and we're beyond Q2, so I expect it might be.
Excellent, thank you. Other members with questions? Just looking at the Councillor Marsh first of all. No. Councillor Absden, please.
Yeah, just a very small one actually. I'm not sure if you want to take it, Councillor Brooks or Councillor Gawley. 5.31, you've got down 36% of suitable West Berkshire public car parks have EV charging available. Does that mean they were installed and working in that percentage? Because it's the bane of my life, coming and parking where we all park to come to this meeting, and there's been 2 charging points there out of action now for at least 6 months. And if that's included in the 36% of suitable, we're fooling ourselves really. Just the accuracy of this number is important so that we don't think we've achieved something where we haven't quite got there. I know we all want to go in the right direction, but can we have the numbers reflect what's the actual situation is?
I think it's a good question, and I'll hand it off to Councillor Gawley.
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I will find out and come back to you.
All right, lovely. Thanks very much. There is another little bit here. You're talking about, it doesn't mention the whole business of making the existing charging points that are on street charging in the lampposts. There was meant to be a trial going on. I couldn't easily find where it talked about how progress on that particular area in terms of, and to clear an interest, I finally got an electric vehicle today. So I kind of, and I haven't got a charging point at home or at work. So I'll kind of be using what's available. So can we sort that out? So kind of quickly, please.
I'm sure we can. We've got a for the on-street electric charging lampposts. So we do have a particular set of criteria that we work to.
Yeah, there was supposed to be a trial one some time ago. I don't think I've ever seen a report on it, but it'd just be great to get an update on.
There are a number already out there, I believe, that we're operating.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Any other questions at all? Just looking up to the screen. No. Okay, thank you. As I said, that was just to note that report so it doesn't require a vote. So I will move us then on to item 9, which is the Newbury Town Centre pedestrianisation extension trial. Councillor Gaines, I believe you're going to propose this report.
Just so proposed.
Thank you. And Councillor Colston?
Yes, I will second the report. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And back to you, Councillor Gaines, please.
Thank you, Leader. The Council's strategy 2023 to 2027 provides a clear commitment to conduct a trial extension to the pedestrianisation timings in Newbury Town Centre. This also aligns with a key aim of the Newbury Town Centre Master Plan and adopted in February 2023. A council strategy that all councillors across the political divide signed up to, and a town centre master plan that the previous Conservative administration initiated. This report with its recommendations details the methodology of that trial and its planned objectives. The aim of the trial is to seek to create a more vibrant and welcoming town centre. Removing the traffic in the evening will have a significant benefit for the hospitality trade, improving the ambience of the alfresco style dining and encouraging cafes and restaurants to spill out onto the public highway. This will also have the potential to draw in additional custom and increase evening trade. It will allow more flexibility for larger events to take place, permits permitting. Removing traffic in the evening will also improve safety for walking and cycling through the town centre, creating a safer environment and encouraging more sustainable transport. This is not a war on cars, but a boost for business and the nighttime economy. The report seeks approval for the Executive to submit an application to the Department of Transport requesting consent from the Secretary of State to proceed with the implementation of an experimental traffic regulation order, or an ETRO. Providing this is consented to, the intention would be to implement a minimum 6-month trial and to consult with the community and stakeholders during the trial period. The report also seeks approval to commence the non-experimental traffic order, a TRO, process should the response from the Secretary of State on the use of the ETRO for this purpose not be favourable. Just to make it clear, an ETRO is only in operation between 6 and 18 months and is then revoked. A TRO can be implemented if the trial is a success. A TRO is a full traffic order and will need to go through a similar statutory process to revoke as it would be subject to when it's invoked. So quite a long consultation period, etc. The consultation period also differs between the two different routes. An ETRO requires consultation during the trial period. This will enable us to capture actual comments, ideas and issues rather than a pre-consultation, which would only capture the perception of the trial and its possible outcomes. TROs require consultation prior to the order being implemented, also consultation when the TRO is removed, if it is removed. Paragraph 5.17 details the timescales for each possible process. I'm requesting that the Executive approve A, the making of an experimental traffic regulation order to extend the hours of pedestrianisation in Newbury Town Centre, subject to any required Secretary of State approval. And B, in principle, the making of a traffic regulation order to extend the hours of pedestrianisation in Newbury Town Centre, subject to formal consultation should the Secretary of State not give consent to the use of an ETRO. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gaines. Are there any comments from exec members? Councillor Brooks, please.
Thank you, Leader. I've spent a fair bit of time with Councillor Gaines and Councillor Colston and officers, and it really quite stark the obstacles we've faced to try and get this ETRO in. And the Department for Transport have not helped us one little bit. If anything, I think they are stumped about what the legislation says when you're trying to extend a street that is already pedestrianised beyond 10 hours. And it's almost beyond their capability. We are doing everything we can. So I just draw attention to this, Leader. Some of us might remember that in 1998, Northbrook Street was pedestrianised in daylight hours. There was all sorts of disquiet, anxiety, hand-wringing about how terrible it would be. 25 years later, I don't think anybody would say it has been anything but a success. And all we are looking to do is extend this into the evening trade to help businesses. And again, we are hearing the clarion voices of people like we did in 1998 that it will be dreadful. And every time they think that, I want them to think about what happens now and how well liked that is. Because I think it's being forgotten, Leader.
No, thank you, Councillor Brooks. Councillor Colston.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I think we would really like to do an ETRO because the consultation will be based on real experience rather than preconceptions. And frankly, that's the only way we can find out whether there is strong support for this or not, which is what the whole purpose is.
I think, yeah, not only the support is what does it do for footfall in the town? What does it do for business takings for the town? And also, does it have an impact on traffic flows or not? But yeah, thank you. I will come to, I don't think any, Councillor Vickers, sorry.
You reminded me, I think it was you, Councillor Brooks, that I was a member for Kintbury at the time that the bypass was finished and that the pedestrianisation started. And it was such a wonderful change. And there are some people who can never persuade. But the fact is, cars don't buy anything. People buy things on foot. And if they're deterred by the noise and congestion from having a pleasant experience in doing so, they will go elsewhere. And for many years, I remember a friend of mine who lived in Abingdon, which is actually a lot closer to Oxford. He came to Newbury because it was a pleasant market town where you could shop in comfort. And, you know, I suppose I should declare an interest as somebody who's always lived in the Newbury town centre. But the response to the master plan consultation, which was extremely thorough, carried out by an independent outside consultant, was overwhelmingly in favour of doing this, both from the business community and from the residents of Newbury. So ETR, as somebody who's done research, no research is really valid unless you do it and then see what happens. Otherwise you'll just get people's fears expressed, which are based on no facts.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. I'm going to come back to Councillor Gaines, and then I think we'll go to opposition colleagues for some comments.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Vickers. I actually wasn't going to go too much detail on the master plan, but actually there were over 3,000 responses to the master plan, and the top 5 requirements for the key messages, basically the top 5 requirements were more local shops, cafes and restaurants, more street furniture and planting, and backing up a national survey that shows a shift towards importance of green spaces and alfresco dining. And under the under 25 cohort had that as one of as a top 4.
And I think that backs up the move that for town centres to be vibrant, it's actually not necessarily the shopping offer, it's the sense of place that's now created. But I will now come to opposition colleagues. Councillor McKinnon, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. Well, my position on this hasn't changed since July, in that I'm not necessarily against pedestrianisation, but I do think we should be asking residents and businesses before implementing any changes. It does sound a little bit from members opposite there, clarion voices, and you can't persuade some of the people ever. It does sound a little bit like we know best. And once we implement it, you'll see that we were right. Maybe you are right, but you might not be. It's happened before. And sound from listening to some of the comments there. Oh, the consultation response will be better once it's in place. You don't really get that good data in advance. I'm not sure I buy that. I mean, there must be some benefits of consulting before a TRO, for instance. If you have to impose a traffic regulation order, you have to consult on that, and there's a benefit to doing so. There's a reason for doing that. You would get, I'm sure you would concede, some useful information from consulting prior to a change. But I've got specific concerns about 3 things. Firstly, the impact on disabled residents. And I will be asking shortly, I'll be asking later on in members' questions about, have you spoken to disabled residents about this? Because there's an equality issue to deal with. Also, the effect on businesses. You mentioned footfall, and there may be a positive effect on footfall, sure, in the evening for hospitality businesses. There's quite a lot of town centre businesses that need to take deliveries, and they need to take deliveries in the routes that won't be open from 5 o'clock onwards. And it's not as simple as saying, well, you'll just have to organise the deliveries before 10 a.m. Some of these businesses have got complex supply chains. They're not able to do that easily. Councillor Colston, I've got a specific question to you just on business. I know that in July you had a meeting with some businesses. I think it was part of the bid, and you received some feedback from them. What did they have to say? What was the impression you had in that meeting about town centre businesses' appetite for this to happen?
Okay, thank you, Councillor McKinnon. We won't answer your first point because you've got it as a member's question later.
Fine.
So yeah, because we'll just cover it off then. But your direct question to Councillor Colston then, please.
Yes, so I attended a bid meeting. We've subsequently met with the bid as well since. They're broadly supportive and are planning to consult their members prior to any ETRO or TRO, so that if there are any specific things that we can address before anything happens, then we can do so.
So I thank you for that, Councillor Wilson. I think I didn't make myself clear. It's my fault. I know the bid are broadly supportive of this. I'm talking about individual businesses. Have you had any negative comments from them regarding this proposal?
There were one or two businesses who were sceptical about it, yes.
Councillor Gaines, what does your traffic modelling suggest the impact will be on surrounding roads at the evening peak once this proposal happens?
We are not planning on opening the American Bridge. I'm going to make that clear because I think that's one of the things that people are referring to. We have looked at the modelling of the traffic, and I don't think there's going to be a great deal of change to it. People will actually get used to it the same way as they get used to it during the day. I think that the area through Northbrook Street is a bit that won't be able to be have access to, but the surrounding areas will take that traffic.
Do I take it from your answer? Sorry, Leader. Do I take it from your answer that you have done a traffic modelling survey on the impact of closing these roads?
We haven't decided yet whether we're going to do an ETRO or TRO. Once we have decided which one we're going to go for, when we have the answer from the Secretary of State, we will do the modelling. The same way we will be asking questions of the residents and the retail people at that point.
That's a no then.
That's
to traffic modelling.
We don't need to do one at this point because we don't know whether it's a TRO or an ETRO at this stage.
Will you conduct traffic modelling before you impose the change, whether it's an ETRO or a TRO?
Yes.
Okay, good. Have you, the disabled residents I've spoken to, page 92, 93 of the pack, Councillor Gaines, why is there a 15-month gap between preparing the PR and starting the statutory consultation for a TRO? Page 92, 93 of the pack. It straddles both pages. There appears to be a 15-month gap in the timing between performing the PR for a TRO and then starting the statutory consultation.
The TRO takes that amount of time to actually go through the process.
What, 15 months between PR and consultation?
That is the problem. That is the problem between the ETRO and the TRO.
Councillor, I'll bring you in 1 second. If I can just have other mics off as well, just because it will start creating some feedback. Okay, Councillor Colston, please.
I think, as you probably knew, Councillor McKinnon, that January 23 should be January 24.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
No, I didn't, Councillor Colston, but thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, point taken, but it's clearly a typo on the form.
And apologies for that. I should have checked that.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor McKinnon.
One more. What happens, Councillor Gaines, when town centre businesses cannot arrange their supply chains to receive deliveries before 10 a.m? Do they just have to lump it for 6 months?
We will be talking to deliveries. The whole point of the the whole point of an ETRO is we'll do the consultation during that ETRO. We will be talking to people during that ETRO to find out the issues and the concerns they have, as well as the positive comments that I'm sure an awful lot of people will be bringing forward.
Sorry, Councillor Gaines, one, I need to come back on that, Leader. So the ETRO start the clock, you got 6 months. 4 weeks into the ETRO, you've got a business, but I won't name any individual ones that I've spoken to. They can't do it. How long do they have to wait before you change? Is it 6 months? You know, this is a clear possibility.
Is it a clear possibility? I mean, you're saying that it's a clear possibility, but I'm not sure
that a
that's
business will struggle to arrange deliveries.
Let's not talk over each other.
I think actually we will not know the situation until we're in that situation. I cannot answer a question that I don't know is going to happen. If I know something's going to happen, we can then address it at that time. I cannot address a problem before it actually arises.
Thank you, Councillor Gaines. I think I'd just add to that as well, is actually businesses adapt to real life situations. And so if there are changes needed in their deliveries, through the ETRO, then actually their delivery company is just as invested in making sure they can get those deliveries to them as part of that supply chain. So I think the ETRO gives exactly what Councillor Gaines is saying, is a real life example of how businesses may need to adapt to be able to have the wider benefits for the town as a whole. I'm going to move us on. If Councillor McKinnon's finished, Councillor Marsh. Yeah, Councillor Marsh, please.
Thank you. Well, it won't surprise anyone to know that the Green councillors are strongly supportive of the paper produced by the leadership. We've been arguing for this since before we were on the council, in fact. And I do have a question, but just to make if I may make an observation first, there's been talk about consultation. I mean, goodness me. So not only, as you have pointed out, as Councillor Gaines has pointed out, is the Hemingway master plan talk about removing through traffic and the rat run from Northbrook Street and the town centre that Councillor McKinnon and his fellow Conservatives signed off before the Uxbridge by-election. But also, as Councillor Colston will recall, when he was leader of the town council, there was a survey of shoppers who were in favour of this. And the bid itself said, about a couple of years ago, said, we want the town centre to be a safe and welcoming space for visitors, residents and workers to eat, drink and relax in, enjoying an ambient atmospheric setting without the noise and safety risks that vehicle access brings. And Ross, you'll remember that because you and the then leader of the council were just about the only two people in West Berkshire who didn't, or certainly in Newbury, who didn't accept this argument and refused to the bid's very eloquent request to do this then. So what a shame it wasn't, because then we wouldn't be sat here having this discussion and everyone would think, I'm sure, that it was great. You know where we stand. You know what my views are. Can I ask you to undertake to really make the case? I know there's this is an experimental period for 6 months, but as one or two executive members have indicated, particularly on social media, you are going to get, and we've already had, some quite wild allegations made about the motivation for this and about the likely impact of it. And I found myself, when this was previously mooted, going on. Maybe I need to find other things to do, but I found myself going on social media quite a lot trying to defend what the council was proposing. I didn't see, I might have missed you, but I didn't see many executive members doing the same. So can you get out there and make the case and say why you're doing this? Everything in the report, I think, is right. And I think that the public will welcome this. And I think the businesses will benefit from it. But you've got to get out there and make the case, because otherwise you allow people who witter on about this being anti-car or it's going to damage businesses when we know that these schemes benefit businesses. But don't let them take the initiative. Can you retain the initiative and make that case?
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Councillor Gaines.
I will do my very best, David. I'm not a fan, I've got to say, of social media backwards and forwards. I think sometimes it's actually more detrimental than it's actually effective. But there obviously there are ways of doing this. We can actually do lots of publication. We've already put out press releases. We can carry on doing that. Notice boards, customer council bulletins, etc., to actually promote this. I don't know what my other executive colleagues feel, but I mean, I do worry that when you get to sort of social media things, you kind of have decisions by social media is not always a good outcome. But I take your point.
Yeah, I think through the council social media channels, though, we can absolutely promote what this policy is about and what we hope that it will achieve, rather than necessarily jumping on local chat boards, for example. I've got Councillor Abbs next, please, and then Councillor Somner, and then Councillor Wollaston.
Okay, thank you very much, Leader. I'm very much a do what you can, not do what you can't person, and I haven't said anything yet, Ross. Very personal. I think extending in the summer, I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. Extending around the Christmas period, as long as some mulled wine in a bratwurst available, I'm quite happy to brave the elements and go out in the evenings. I'm less convinced of a blanket ban all year round or a blanket extension all year round. Just put it out there that if we are into an experimental phase and they won't allow us to close the road completely, maybe we could shrink the road, keep the traffic going through it, you know, and take the halfway house now while we can, take the advantages and experiment a bit, see how it goes. Now, Councillor McKinnon did mention access for the disabled. It's something I'm concerned about. I'm sure we're all concerned about it. But that drop off, pick up, you know, in the town centre, that means those people are eating, they are shopping. So we can get the advantages of having less traffic in some of the streets, not all of the streets, but we can do it sooner because I think you can avoid some of this legislation issue but maybe I'm wrong. I'm not close enough to it to know, but just put it out there for now. I guess I haven't got a question. It was more of a, let's experiment if we're going to experiment and do it now.
Thank you, Councillor Abbs. Councillor Gaines.
As it wasn't really a question, I can just sort of make a few comments. I don't think half measures is a good idea. I think it will confuse motorists, especially if we have it sort of half a road closed or half a road open. Blue badge question I think comes up later anyway on the members' questions. So we will be looking at things. I mean, as I say, it's a trial. I keep saying it's a trial. Nobody's actually saying this is going to happen, it's going to stay. We are trialing this. If it's successful, we will actually ask for a TRO. ETROs can be revoked at any point. If we find that this is actually a mitigated disaster, we can actually revoke it. But I don't think it will be. I think this is going to be a great success. It was a great success to pedestrianise it during the retail hours. This is going to just enhance the hospitality trade. There's no doubt about it.
Thank you, Councillor Gaines.
May I just come back on that, please, Leader?
Yeah, go on.
It's very short. It wasn't meant as a half measure. It was meant as a practical measure you could be doing now. And to be honest, that...
Okay, we get that. I mean, I think Councillor Gaines said about half closing roads, not being a half measure.
I need to expand on what half closing. We're not closing the road. We're just changing it to a single traffic direction in one way and then coming back in the bridge that you don't want to open. There are practical solutions to the problems that have been put forward.
Thank you, Councillor Abbs, for those comments. I'm going to move us on. Councillor Somner, please.
Thank you, Leader. Just a few thoughts from me. Obviously, I was a person that's often sat on the opposite side of David's conversation and often been filled in the questions that have come over. I just want to remind everybody that of those consultations that have been done so far, they were pretty much 50-50. They pretty much split Newbury in half. Now, whether those consultations were comprehensive, whether they were done in social media, whether they were done in the press, you can take that as you find it. But it's something to bear in mind that through all of those different routes, I don't believe there was a massive shift. It wasn't that one was 50-50 and if you did it differently, it was 70-30. There was a 50-50 all the way through. So we just need to be mindful of that and mindful of how big we make that engagement, because it really does need to be comprehensive. And I know that is your aim. Councillor Vickers, you mentioned that cars don't buy things, people on foot do. But people on foot don't do deliveries. Delivery companies do deliveries, but they need to be able to get to the companies to pick up before they can do deliveries. And that in itself brings up a whole new element of concern for me that needs to be factored in, which is around bikes, scooters, e-bikes, e-scooters, because I would be massively concerned that there wasn't an option to look at how pedestrians thinking they're safe in a totally pedestrianised zone find that they're not. I've walked down the high street on many occasions when it's been within pedestrianisation and then it got wiped out by somebody on a push bike who was taking absolutely no notice of the people around them or the speeds that they might have been travelling at. So we need to think about that as part of any sort of model that's put together. And again, I would, and I think I've said this before, please make sure that that is built into anything that might come forward. Councillor Marsh mentioned quite rightly the rebuttals that he was given on social media, and I sat there for quite a while reading through those, David. I thought you were very active and well done on it. My question is, will any of those existing comments out there be taken as part of consultation? People have actually been out there making comments already. I'm again concerned that people may have think that they've done it once. Will they be covered and picked up as part of that, or will we be expecting them to make comment again? We need to make sure that people know if they're not, so that they do come back and make comment again. The whole bid consultation, when I was involved in the detail that was coming in, the one thing that was obvious was about it's the companies in that area, the premises. It didn't include, and it won't include through bid, the other companies that are massively affected, like taxi companies. And I would ask, if they haven't already, please, that can they be included, targeted within consultation, so that we make sure that those businesses that will be affected outside of even normal shop hours have actually got the opportunity and know that they've delivered their views on any proposition that might be coming forward. And the final thing for me is about the Robin Hood roundabout. 5.11 in the report mentions about the obvious impacts that there will be. The additional issue around that is the planned, and I hope still ongoing, redevelopment of the Robin Hood roundabout and the reshaping of it. Because that, as I've always understood it, is a major piece of work. That's not going to be the sort of thing that happens in a couple of weeks. And that in itself puts you right back into the same issues that we've had with Kings Road, in that traffic's going to need to go somewhere and you're not all going to want it bottling up. So how do we deal with that, noting that that should have been a lot further forward than it currently is and isn't for many reasons? Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sumner. Before I bring Councillor Gaines in, just on the 50-50 claim on the consultation, well, what better way than actually implementing a trial so people really can see what the impact is, and then they can make an informed decision. In terms of bikes and e-bikes, that's exactly the same situation that we have at the moment with daytime pedestrianisation. And so I'd be keen to learn what the previous administration did to help that, and we can take that learning on board. And in terms of the consultation on Facebook, those comments won't be taken on board, because actually it's about consulting while the scheme is in place, and there will be a formal consultation on the council's website where people will be able to give their comments in a structured way, and of course that will include the taxi trade. I'll go to Councillor Gaines for any other comments, particularly the detailed one around the Robin Hood roundabout.
So Leader's actually answered the notes that I'd made. I mean, one of the things I would say about social media consultation and the 50-50 thing is that it is only a social media snapshot. The master plan got over 3,000 responses, and the local residents are more supportive of Northbrook Street being permanently pedestrianised as one of those key messages. So it's not about people being on social media. They will be, everybody will be entitled, once the ETRO or the TRO is in place, will actually be able to submit their questions and their concerns, and if they like the situation as well, so they can all do that. On the question of the roundabout, it has been delayed, I think, somewhat. I'm just reading again because I didn't actually. Right, so yeah, so we're going to be pushing that back until we know what the permanent future is going to look like on the Robin Hood roundabout. I just had that from.
Sorry, can I just clarify that you're pushing the ETRO back until the Robin Hood roundabout?
No, we're pushing the work on the Robin Hood roundabout back until we know what's permanently going to happen.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Is that okay, Councillor Sumner?
Yes.
That's the answer.
Yeah. Well, it is the answer, and there we are. Yeah, I still think the taxi companies should be a targeted consultation, not just an assume.
Every stakeholder right across the board will be consulted. We will make it very obvious how you consult. We're very obvious. We'll do what I was saying to Councillor Marsh. We will actually put everything out as it should be. We'll publicise as much as we can. If people don't choose to participate, that's not an issue. That's not our problem. But if they do, then we will take those issues into consideration.
I understand that. I just to repeat, I do think there should be a message with anything that goes out that says if you've already commented up until the point the consultation is open, it doesn't count. You haven't made a statement. It's not being collated. You need to make a comment and take part in the consultation.
I will bear that in mind, Councillor Sumner.
Thank you. And I think maybe the last questions for you, Councillor Gaines, is Councillor Wollaston, please.
Thank you, Leader. As one of the few people who actually lives to the west of Newbury rather than the east or the centre, I've regularly driven down Bartholomew Street and Northbrook Street after various council meetings over the last 5 years, and I can assure you there's virtually no one there who is even looking for alfresco dining or is looking to outside drinking. I can completely understand in Market Square. That makes huge sense, but I'm not convinced remotely that Bartholomew Street and Northbrook Street makes any sense whatsoever.
Thank you, Councillor Wollaston.
Can I just finish, Councillor Gaines? And my other big concern is you specifically said to me in an answer in, I think it was July this year, that you would do a full consultation before this was put in place. And you've patently not done that. I'd like to know why.
No, Councillor Wollaston, in terms of it being put in place, it is a permanent solution. This is part of the consultation while it's going on. But Councillor Gaines, please.
Yeah, so the first part, the first point, I too live west of the district, as you know, and I do utilise the Northbrook Street on the way home. I almost ran somebody over the other evening because they were in a buggy because it was dark and they had no lights on. The reason we don't have alfresco dining at the moment is because it's unattractive to people to sit outside and breathe in all those emissions. Why would you sit outside in a place like that if you actually are constantly being badgered by cars going past? You wouldn't do it. And as for the July question, I actually said we would talk to people. I didn't say we'd consult. I said we'd talk to people. And we will talk to people. We will talk to the groups that are concerned before we put it into operation. We will then consult with everybody about the process, if it's an ETRO. And if it's a TRO, we will do it prior to the bringing in the TRO.
Excellent. Can I come back, Leader?
Briefly, please, Councillor
Very
Wollaston.
briefly, I will review the YouTube, but I'm absolutely convinced in my memory that you said you would definitely consult before it was introduced.
Okay, well, the video will conclude what Councillor Gaines said, but I think the essence of what Councillor Gaines has just said in response to is if it's a TRO, there will be a full consultation beforehand, and if it's an experimental traffic regulation order, then the consultation will take place during that ETRO. So actually, consultation will take place before any permanent decision is made. I'm going to bring this to a close. Councillor Gaines has proposed this and it was seconded by Councillor Colston. And so this is for the executive approves the making of an experimental traffic regulation order to extend the hours of pedestrianisation in the town centre, subject to any Secretary of State approval, and in principle, the making of a traffic regulation order, again, to extend the hours of pedestrianisation in the town centre, subject to formal consultation, should the Secretary of State not give consent to the use of an experimental traffic regulation order. Can I see those members in favour, please? Thank you. I think we'll all be happy not to say ETRO or TRO for a while. Well done, Councillor Gaines. We move on to item 10, which is the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Framework. This is for myself to propose as the leader. Councillor Colston, do I see a seconder from yourself?
Yes, indeed, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you. The joys of not being in a chair, you get to tuck into sandwiches, you see. I'd just also like to say that this item went before the scrutiny committee. I was there to hear comments on that. Within the report, there is just one minor error under 8.6, which references Stonewall. There were comments at the scrutiny committee about whether that was the most appropriate body. We will look when we go to tender for any accreditation which is the most appropriate one, and bring that back to executive for members to be aware of. Going into the substantive part of the paper, I'd just like to bring your attention to Appendix E, which is the actual council framework, and in particular the vision and then the strategic priorities. So the vision is West Berkshire where everyone can thrive, and the strategic principles is the first is everyone is seen and heard. Second is everyone is celebrated. Third is everyone has a responsibility. And fourthly, everyone is understood. My administration and my party are proud of our inclusive beliefs. The EDI framework provides the council with a framework upon which everyone is quite clear about how this administration, how this council wish to proceed. And I commend it to members. Are there any comments or questions from the executive? No, thank you. Coming over to opposition colleagues, Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Leader. And yeah, the only comment I was going to make was the comment I made at scrutiny. And you've mentioned that you're going to consider which is the most appropriate. So it would appear that you're listening to what the Scrutiny Commission said, which is really good to hear. So look forward to hearing the final decision, but stand by those comments, but glad they've been taken into account.
Thank you for that, Councillor McKinnon. And just interested in terms of a bit of research, which I know you had done as well, is actually the Rainbow Laces campaign is run by Stonewall, of which Rangers FC are a supporter of. So you may want to lobby your home club as well with your concerns of that organisation. Any other comments or questions from any other members? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'm really pleased with this paper. In fact, I think it was a motion that I delivered probably on my very early days as a member of executive. So it is a subject close to my heart. Just a minor detail there is on page 114, it says name of budget holder is Susan Powell, who of course is no longer a member of the council. So that just needs to be adjusted.
Yeah, and budget holders will change throughout, but thank you for drawing that up. It will be April Perbody for members' information as the replacement for Susan there. Excellent. So no other comments or questions. So can I see from members of the executive, please, that we note the evidence base contained within Appendix C and D. We agree the framework and the action plan for the next 12 months. And we also agree the new equality impact assessment as stated in Appendix F, and agree the updated action plan, which was a separate document that was updated in September 23. Members of the executive, thank you. That's carried. We move on to item 11, which is the contract award for the provision of bus service network contract. Councillor Gaines, I believe you're going to propose this report.
So proposed.
Thank you. Councillor Macro seconding. So seconded. Just to, this report is split into two sections. There's a part one, so a public part of this. And then the voting will take place in the part two part of the meeting, but the decision will go on our website within 5 days. Over to you, please, Councillor Gaines.
Thank you, Leader. So this paper seeks the executive's approval in accordance with its delegated authority to award a bus service network contract covering the period from the 2nd of September 2024 for a period of 5 years to the 1st of September 2029, with the option to agree a further 3-year extension to the 1st of September 2032. There is a part 2 report which details the recommendations, as these are commercially sensitive. Currently, those bus operators who submit final bids for their tenders have not been informed of the outcomes of these bids, and they won't be informed until after this meeting. The annual cost of the current 5 bus working, that's the number of, that's the Newbury District bus services as it is £893,552. In 2022-23, we received a fare revenue of £178,346 in the revenue. This is a high value contract. However, it's essential as it directly impacts on local residents' travel patterns, including employment, education, health and leisure opportunities. And so it is effectively effective contract management is essential. In Q2 of the current financial year, 53,614 passenger journeys were made on the contracted network service, enabling our residents to actually get around the district fairly freely. The responsibility of this contract will sit with the transport team. The contract covers 5 working bus services, which means that the existing service will continue with no or minimal changes by the winning bidder. The current services are detailed in Appendix C. The resulting contract will cover the period, as I said before, 2nd of September 2024 to the 1st of September 2029, with that extension of 3 further years. I commend this report.
Thank you, Councillor Gaines. I was just taking some advice in terms of members leaving the room and the voting protocol. So apologies for that, for slightly putting you off during your comments, but wanted to make sure we were constitutionally sound. So I think we're okay. Yeah. Do any members of the executive have any comments or questions? No. So just from my desk, not the biggest of bus users, to be brutally honest with everybody. We'll be getting the bus home tonight, actually, because I've got a friend's leaving party, and happened to use the bus just last week to come into Newbury. My wife is a frequent user of the buses, as now is my mother, who has got to the age where she has free access to the buses. And what I think is particularly important is, regardless of which contractor wins, the services stay the same, because that familiarity of route is what encourages people to actually use the buses, because they know when they're going to arrive, and they get used to that pattern of service. So I think that's a crucial element of it. So thank you, Councillor Gaines. I'll come to colleagues opposite for any comments or questions. Councillor Marsh, was that just a rough random finger? Was it a comment? You, Councillor Marsh first, and then Councillor Culver. Yeah,
happy to defer to my colleague, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. It's just one question. Will there be enough flexibility in the contract should we wish to change the bus times in the future? For example, if we want to have evening buses to serve the rural areas?
We, as I said earlier on in the meeting, we will have that demand responsive bus operating from the 5th of January. I very much would like to see further response to demand response buses within the area, not just in the area it's going through. That's going to be Monday to Friday, and I would like it to be extended again to weekends and evenings as well. So I think the current bus services as they stand will stay the same timetable, because as Councillor Dillon just said, people get used to buses being at a particular time. However, we are part of the business improvement plan forum. So anything, I suppose, is possible.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Culver. Councillor Marsh. No. Oh, you don't. Well, okay, sorry. I thought you put your hand up, and I go to you first as the leader of the minority group. Councillor Williston, please.
Thank you, Leader. As a member of Lambourne, you won't be surprised I'm very keen on this. I have repeatedly told my residents that you either use it or lose it. So we need to increasingly use this bus service into Newbury. And as I now live in Boxwood, can I just request the timetables changed to read the Boxwood rather than the Bell Public House, not our wonderful new restaurant and pub?
I think Councillor Gaines will take that on board. You're right. Yeah, the public house has changed its name.
Of course, it's just been redone. So yes, I will actually look into that for you, Councillor Williston.
Thank you.
I mean, Councillor Williston, you can walk to that as well now, can't you?
I can. And I have an electric car, so I'm very green, Leader.
Yeah. Excellent. So you don't drive back though, I'm sure. Okay, no other questions on that. And the voting, as I said, will take place in the part 2 section of the agenda. Item 12 is the Rural England Prosperity Fund Business Grant Scheme. Councillor Colston, will you propose that?
Yes, I will, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Cottenham seconding.
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Colston.
Thank you, Leader. So the Rural England Prosperity Fund Business Grant Scheme is a really important scheme for us. So rural business is vital for employment in the villages, and that helps to keep them viable and sustainable long term, and is an important element of our council strategy. This grant scheme, along with another one that will be announced or put into place early next year for village halls and community buildings, shows our support for our rural communities. This rural business grant scheme will provide support to small rural businesses, that's businesses with no more than 10 employees, to help them grow and or diversify by making grants of between £10,000 and £40,000. The total funding available between now and the end of the 24-25 financial year is almost £300,000. So up to 30 businesses will be supported, depending on the average size of the applications. There are clear criteria for the grant, which are outlined in section 6.9, and the information required will be made clear to applicants, and that is set out in section 6.10. And the awards will be made by an officer member panel on the basis of those criteria. As it says in section 5.5, the scheme falls under intervention 1.1, which states that capital grant funding for small scale investment in micro and small enterprises in rural areas, and that's what we're doing. The economic development team, which is going to be administering this, has experience of doing something very similar. They delivered the COVID additional restrictions grant during COVID, and that experience has informed the design of this scheme. We had positive feedback on the principle of this scheme at the Rural Business Forum, and assuming that this is approved, it will be launched immediately, and there will be rolling review of applications, and awards will be made on a rolling basis up until either the fund is fully exhausted or until March 2025. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Colston. Any comments or questions from executive members? No. Members of the opposition, Councillor McKinnon.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Thanks, Councillor Colston. I was very close to this topic when I was an executive member. The rural economy is of utmost importance to West Berkshire, and this grant scheme from the government is it's really targeted. It's a very, very good scheme, and diversification of rural businesses is something that a lot of farming businesses, equestrian businesses are having to do in order to survive and thrive, and also create employment in lots of our rural areas. I just want to make a plea, really, is that when you have diversification, which involves sort of extensions or renovations of buildings, there's going to be a planning application, and it's really important, I think, for you as portfolio holder to keep an eye on how the planning rules are applied, because certainly in the few years that I've been on the council, there have been some planning applications which have been rejected on the grounds of sustainability, simply because you have to drive there. So there's going to be an increase in customers attending the site. You can only get there through driving, therefore it's unsustainable. That is an interpretation which has been made by some planning officers in the past. That is not the only interpretation you can make about that course of action. And with so much of West Berkshire realistically only drivable to, keep an eye on it, but no, fully support what you're doing on this one.
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. Councillor Colston.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Councillor McKinnon. I agree with you. I'm very pleased to be working closely with Catherine Maycant on this. We've got new planning officers about to join us in January, and then hopefully shortly afterwards as well, who have got fully understand the administration's position, where we want to try and, obviously we've got to stick within planning policy and law and all the rest of it, but to tilt the balance, if you like, in favour of business and things that are going to help the rural communities. So yes, thank you for the comment.
So I think that's the landowner's answer. Now we go to the planner. Councillor Vickers.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most, the word exciting comes to mind straight away. Both Councillor Colston and I have been on a number of visits to rural landowners and businesses and trying to create the synergy between them and us and the degree of trust that the planning system is on their side. This administration wants to say yes, but of course we have to comply with policy. And to give credit to the previous administration, starting the Rural Business Forum and the idea of the whole estate plans has the potential to be absolutely transformative for our rural areas. And just visiting the 7 organisations we visited, Martin and I, in the last 2 weeks with the outgoing executive director, and having just attended the interviews for the incoming executive director, all I can say is
service director.
Everybody, service director, sorry. All I can say is that we sorry, am I promoting somebody? I shouldn't. Well, I would couple you in as well, Claire. We are really all of one mind now, the landowners, the businesses, the council membership, and our officers, and it's something that we've had absolutely no pushback at all. Planning is there to enable sustainable development to happen, and that's what we believe.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers.
Thanks, Councillor Vickers. Thanks for the credit as well. Can we make sure that's minuted? Thank you very much.
Councillor Culver, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Colston. Really pleased to see this, very supportive of it, and likewise the Village Hall grant. And thank you for coming back to me about my previous questions about that. And also the Ealing Cycleway as well, which is the existing part, has been very well used by residents in my ward. I wish you the best of luck with getting the money that's been allocated for this financial year shifted in the 3-month period that we have remaining. I mean that very genuinely. And also just one point in 6.18, it talks about businesses having needed to have traded since August 2020 in order to apply for the scheme, and that they should have been trading for at least 2 years. Bearing in mind that the first grants will be going out in January 24, could we amend that to January 22? So any business that had been operating since then, because my only concern is August 2020 was right during COVID. So there may have been businesses that have sprung into life since then that would miss out if we said to them they had to have been in existence since August 2020.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Culver. I'll just double check to make sure there's no reason why not, but it sounds like a sensible thing. And in terms of being able to award the first tranche of money by the end of March, yes, we will do our best to do that. But it also says in the paper that we believe that if we haven't, a request will be looked on favourably to roll it over to the next year. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so we think that it will be involved in the regulations relating to the scheme. So we'll vote on the paper as is tonight, Councillor Culver, but with the intention that if we can do that, then we will, if that's okay. Thanks. Any other comments or questions? No, thank you. So the recommendation is that the proposal for the design of the business grant scheme, which is set out in section 6, are approved, and that the scheme is launched in line with the delivery programme set out in paragraph 6.22, and that if it is approved by the executive, the scheme will be launched immediately. All those in favour, please. Thank you. That's carried. We now move on to item 13, which is the senior management restructure within resources. Councillor Brooks, are you going to propose this, sir?
Very happy to, Leader.
Thank you.
I do. Second it.
Thank you, Councillor Cottenham. Over to you, Councillor Brooks, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. This restructure actually will see the removal of 3 substantive heads of service posts with the creation of a service director post. It is in line with the senior management structure paper, March 2019. And in fact, you can see on page 281 a table, almost a chronology of how that has come into being now. I draw your attention to 4.1. This will create a new department supported by the previously agreed service director post, the removing of existing heads of service posts. The paper sees the service director transformation post becoming permanent, because as fast as you transform things, there's a lot to do. You probably need to start again because you've been so long in getting around every facet of this organisation. It will lead, and we'll take this in part two, of course, to a potential redundancy. But this report is really to inform members and seek their approval of this important structural change, which, as I say, has been a work in progress. So it shouldn't be a surprise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Any comments or questions from executive members? Any questions from opposition colleagues? Councillor Culver, please.
Thank you, Leader. I need to declare an interest at this point, say that I'm a member of Unison. I've got a few questions, if I may, Councillor Brooks. The consultation period for this particular aspect of the restructure seems to have been done very quickly since the middle of November. Bearing in mind that we started to look at this back in 2019, I was just wondering why that period has been quite tight and whether that's allowed people to have sufficient time to give their feedback. Regarding making the Service Director for Transformation permanent, my understanding is that this role was offered earlier this year on a 2-year contract. And I'm just wondering whether we ought to wait for the output of that role to be seen before we make the role permanent. I know you very helpfully brought us a 6-point paper about transformation earlier in the year. And it said in there was going to be a strategy for transformation. So should we wait for that strategy and to see some of the results of that before we make that role permanent? Another question, if I may, one of the risks identified is that it will reduce strategic capacity, but it will provide greater resilience. If we're creating another very senior role, would we not hope that that's actually increasing rather than reducing our strategic capacity? So maybe you could just expand for me, if you would be kind enough to do so, about what you mean by it reducing strategic capacity but increasing resilience. And then just last but not least, my understanding is that the senior management restructure that began back in 2019 was due to be cost neutral. Is that still the case? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Culver. So 4 questions there for you, Councillor Brooks.
I've got them. Consultation was not out of order with our standard processes, standard practices, so I'm not sure there's anything to see there. Staff were consulted, you know that. I don't think it was out of whack with our normal consultation period. Transformation is already taking place, and it has to, because we're under such financial pressure. And in this room, I've actually said to members before that we're seeing early wins, small wins, but early wins. Councillor Cottingham referred to some earlier. Transformation's going on, and the Transformation Director is working hard within that. Recruitment, agency workers, compliant purchasing, cheaper purchasing of contractor workers. It's all happening. No, you don't say we wait, we get on with it, and we are getting on with it. Strategy, how many strategies we got here? About 56 of them, 52. The strategies are being put together. Councillor Colston is working through them. I think he wants to streamline them. There'll be plenty of strategic capability. Operational capability is a challenge as well. And finally, senior management review. Actually, this is interesting because ultimately, in going from 3 heads of service, Councillor Culver, to a service director, slightly higher grade, and a service lead, will save 96k annually. So it's better than neutral, and it is more efficient. I hope that helps.
Just to clarify on the last point, the question was about the restructure that's happened since 2019.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say is, I mean, I think in the details of this report, and obviously the other SMRs happened under the previous administration, it might be that you ask for that as scrutiny, and then you can get all of the SMRs put together. This is the SMR around resources, so I wouldn't expect us to know that answer in all fairness.
Okay, great. Yeah, very happy to scrutinise that. Thank you, Councillor Brooks.
Listen, any other questions or comments? No. So again, the voting for this will take place in part 2 of the meeting, and the decision will be on our website within 5 days. Moving on to item 14, response to the council motion on the Rwanda scheme. Councillor Gaines, are you going to propose this?
So proposed, Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Vickers, happy to second it. Thank you. That was confirmation from Councillor Vickers. The
Sorry.
recording won't pick you up if you don't.
Sorry,
turn on.
I'm happy to second this motion.
Thank you. And then Councillor Gaines, back to you, please.
Thank you, Leader. So the purpose of this report is to provide the executive with further information to enable it to consider a motion relating to the current government's plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda for their claims to be processed. As we know, this is actually an ongoing situation, so not quite sure where we are. I've just been trying to get onto BBC News to find out whether there's anything, any latest news. At the meeting of Council on the 19th of July 2022, the following motion was proposed by the then Councillor Masters. This council is concerned that the government plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. The main points of the motion are people who cross the channel seeking refuge and asylum will be taken to RAF bases in Yorkshire before being sent 4,500 miles away to Rwanda for processing. Offshoring asylum processing for those who have fled war, violence, famine, persecution is inhumane and cruel. This plan violates the principle of the UN Refugee Convention, of which the UK was a founder signatory, which states that we must grant people a fair hearing on UK soil. In April 2022, the government announced the UK and Rwanda Migration and Economic Development Partnership. The scheme has become known as the Rwanda Scheme. Unfortunately, this paper's come through and with things coming, being updated every day, but this is as it was. The basis of the scheme is that a number of unspecified for those claiming asylum would not have their claims processed in the UK, but would be relocated to Rwanda, where their claims would be assessed. If their claims were adjudged valid, then the individual would have the right to remain in Rwanda, but not to return to the UK. If unsuccessful, they could apply to settle in Rwanda or other grounds, or apply to another safe third country. The recommendations are slightly different than the original motion, in as much as it says, write to the government to request an end to the proposed offshoring of people seeking refuge, and this is the bit that's been changed, to third countries, and to demand an end to the deal with Rwanda, and to offer support where we can to ensure that all refugees are treated with the dignity and given the opportunity to make a positive contribution to the economy and cultural life of West Berkshire. Third, Council will be updated on the decision of the Executive.
Thank you, Councillor Gaines. Are there any comments or questions from executive members? No. I would say, obviously this is an extremely live subject. It received back in the House on the second reading. The third reading is where, if we are led to believe parliamentarians, where we will see various amendments put down to it, which will then end up with the final bill being put before parliamentarians for a vote. So we really don't know where this will end up in its final design. However, I think the executive recommendations here, regardless of the individual nuances of the bill coming out of third reading, shows this administration's clear direction, which is that people shouldn't be sent to Rwanda and that they should be treated with dignity. I'll come to members of the opposition for comments. Councillor McKinnon, please.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Yep, certainly people should be treated with dignity, although of course opinions will vary on the desirability of otherwise of the Rwanda scheme, and that is for MPs to deal with. So I wouldn't propose to take up any more time on it than that.
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. Councillor Marsh.
Well, that's all very well, but could I just ask why it's sad that this is still so topical, as Councillor Gaines says. It's a certainly immoral and almost certainly illegal scheme that by now one might have hoped, when this was first put forward as a motion 18 months ago nearly, one might have hoped that by now it would have been consigned to the history book where it belongs, and hopefully it will be at some stage. But how does a motion that's proposed by one of our group in July 22 not get? What happened? Did the previous executive just bury it because they didn't fancy it, because it was a bit embarrassing to them, or can anyone cast any light on this? It just seems extraordinary to me that we could put this forward, and here we are now.
So. Yeah, so in terms of, I can't answer for the previous administration, and why it wasn't resolved. But actually, we as an executive meet in a forum called the Operations Board. And that looks at all of the reports that come to executive, and it also looks at the forward plan of works. And one of the other areas that we've focused on since taking control is all of the outstanding motions, many of which were tabled by my own party and hadn't had a response as well. And actually, I'm pleased to say that I think that might be the last, or there's one more that needs dealing with, and then the whole backlog of all the motions before this council would have been addressed. And then going forward, obviously, we will commit to respond in a timely manner.
Make one further
please, yeah.
point. Of course, this should never have been parked with the executive in the first place. I don't understand why it was. This is very obviously something that should have been debated by the council, and there have been too many of these, as you. Sorry, am I?
No, I was preparing to get you an answer, Councillor Marsh, because
I seem to have two
procedural
seats
question
showing on my thing. I don't know how. Okay. So can I urge you, in the light of this and in all the other motions that you've already referred to, that we try to take shall I say, a more democratic approach to when members submit motions, because we've had a feeling for some years that they tend to get sent off somewhere, so that this is denying members a chance to debate them and denying the people who we represent. Because when they come to you and say, well, how did you vote on that one then? You say, well, of course, I didn't get a vote. It went to executive, or it went to PAG, or it went to TAG, or it went to some other committee, which is completely not what our residents expect or are entitled to expect. I do realise that there are some that has to happen to. This should have been debated by the council, but hopefully it won't have to be, because, as I say, this scheme should be thrown out before too long. Let's hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. In terms of where motions end up, it's partly down to whose decision and responsibility it is to enact what's in the motion. However, I know Councillor Brooks is starting the Constitutional Review Group up again. And actually, I think that the essence of debate at full council on a motion is important, and that people can give an indicative vote, which could then be a steer, in effect, to the executive if we have to be the final decision maker because of the local government legislation that we fall under. A little bit like we could take a steer from scrutiny. So I'm sure there could be some mechanism that could be developed to allow for that type of debate. Yeah, so the monitoring officer there was just saying that obviously some things are enshrined in law. If it's about deploying resources, those resources are under the purview of the executive. However, notwithstanding that, I still think that there could be room for council to give an indicative vote towards the executive. I genuinely think there is a chance to have some wider debate on those motions. I don't know if Councillor Brooks wants to talk about the Constitutional Review Group at all on that.
I share the frustration, and we are starting. And in fact, I think you've been invited to be a member, Councillor Marsh, on that review. I'm very pleased to see that these motions are being washed through, because they've been hanging around for a long time. It's been something we've all been very hot on. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Culver, please.
Thank you very much indeed, Leader. I've just got a few comments to make because we didn't get to debate this in full council, unfortunately. I welcome the compassionate response of the Liberal Democrat administration to this motion that we proposed 18 months ago. It's very refreshing to see that. The Greens very much feel that rather than deporting asylum seekers, we ought to be processing their applications. So we need staff in this country. We know as a council that we need more staff in the care sector. We need more people in construction to build the homes that we desperately need. And we also need people in the hospitality sector. They can be paying taxes, they can be paying rent, they can be spending their money in the shops, and they can help to boost the economy. We've seen this week that growth has gone negative again. You know, let's get people spending some money in the economy and doing those jobs. And rest assured, I think when we're all old, we're going to be very, very grateful that those people come to this country and look after us, especially when our own children and grandchildren have moved to the other end of the country because they can't afford to live here. Last year, Steve was in hospital in Basingstoke for a week in agony, and I looked around the hospital wards. If you took away all of the people there who had come from overseas to work there, the NHS would fall apart. You know, I thanked God for their presence and the fact that they were there to look after him. I would look forward to schemes like the Homes for Ukraine in the future. I hope we can do other things, for example, for the Palestinians. I would welcome that in the future, and I very much hope that the government might consider doing that. And just finally, on a more positive note, I want to offer congratulations to two of our refugee guests who got married in Thatcham this week and were supported by the local community. It was a great celebration, and their names were Teardad and Sahar. And I think it's great that they were able to enjoy their wedding and that they were supported by the West Berkshire community. So again, thank you, Leader, and thank you to your colleagues for your compassionate response to our motion.
Thank you, Councillor Culver. Members of the, sorry, no, I don't think there are any other comments. No. Members of the executive, can I see those in favour of the recommendations that Councillor Gaines read out? Excellent, carried. Item 15, awareness days. So I will propose this report. Councillor Brooks, I think you're seconding. Thank you very much, sir. This is to review and approve the programme of awareness days, which will be supported in 2024. This came about from Councillor Stewart actually raising an awareness day that we didn't support in this calendar year. And I made a commitment that I would go back and review what days we would look at, but also that I would consult fully with members. Every member of the council had a chance to comment on this report, put forward their suggestions, which have, I think, in the realm been adopted. This Awareness Days report also has the flexibility of changing in the future if there are other awareness days that come to prominence or new awareness days that we feel as a council that we should be celebrating or making the wider public aware of. So I commend this report to the executive and ask if there are any questions or comments. No. Questions or comments from opposition members? No, thank you. So if I can see those in favour to review and approve the programme of awareness days for 2024. Thank you. That is carried. We're just at just past 7 o'clock. Do members mind if we just have a 3-minute adjournment before we go into members' questions, if that's okay? Excellent. Thank you. I'll just adjourn. We have Councillor Gaines and we have Councillor McKinnon at the table, so I'm going to restart the meeting. Everyone else quiet, yeah, apart from me. We bring the meeting back to order. Thank you for that short break. We now move on to item 16, which is members' questions. And I invite Councillor Gaines to answer question A in the name of Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor McKinnon, for your question. All known roadworks will be taken into consideration when considering the trial extension to the pedestrianisation. Do you have a supplement?
No, thank you. Thank you. We then move on to Councillor B to be answered by Councillor Gaines in the name of Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you for your question, Councillor McKinnon. The last communication from the Department of Transport was via email on the 21st of November 2023. And the last email communication from officers to DFT was on the 6th of December 2023. Do you have a supplementary?
No, thank you. But I would say my name's Councillor McKinnon, not McKinnock.
I've tried.
I don't have much in common with Neil Kinnock.
I've talked so much tonight.
That's okay. Thank you.
We move on to question C to be answered by Councillor Gaines in the name of Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you for your question, Councillor McKinnon. Officers have been working with legal colleagues and the DFT to understand how a trial can be achieved within legislation. It would not have been a good use of officer time to have them undertake a widespread engagement exercise without knowing when and how the restriction would come into force. The intention is to bring this in by the summer and leave plenty of time to engage as promised. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. How can you say it's not a good use of officers' time to talk to disabled residents and businesses about the potential impact on them?
As I said in our earlier conversations, we will be talking to people. We just will not do the consultation. So we will be talking to interested groups, including taxi drivers, including disabled blue badge owners, and the wider community. But it will be talking to interested stakeholders, but not consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Gaines. Moving on to question D, please, again to be answered by Councillor Gaines in the name of Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. As per my previous answer, yes, we will engage with stakeholders prior to restrictions coming into force. But as I said earlier on to Councillor Wollaston, I said we will talk to local businesses, local residents, and all statutory services. We're not going to be consulting until the actual ETRO comes into force or prior to the TRO, if the TRO is going to be used. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please. Thanks, Councillor Gaines. So I understand what you're saying. So it won't be a full consultation, but you will be talking to them. What sort of format and forum will you be talking to those stakeholders before the restrictions come into place?
Once I know whether we're going to have an ETRO or a TRO, I will actually let you know on that one. I don't know myself yet until we go to the next stage.
So you let me know once you know.
Yeah. Moving on then to question E, answered by Councillor Gaines, standing in the name of Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. As mentioned previously, officers' focus have been on agreeing the legislative process to allow the trial to proceed. There is plenty of time to engage with all stakeholders prior to the implementation. Indeed, if the use of an experimental order is not approved by the Secretary of State, a full statutory consultation will be required as detailed in the report. Do you have a supplementary?
No, thanks. I think that was quite a repetitive question from one I asked earlier on, so apologies for that. No, you can move on to the next one.
Thank you. And then the final member's question of the evening, question F, to be answered by Councillor Gaines in the name of Councillor McKinnon, please.
Thank you for your question, Councillor McKinnon. As mentioned previously, officers... Oh, actually, I've got the same answer.
I think
apologies.
Councillor Gaines need to provide a written answer and written supplementary to Councillor McKinnon.
May I provide a written answer? I was actually in an interview panel until just before this meeting, and I've just picked up the papers that were given to me. I haven't had a chance to look at the actual detail.
Thank you. So I didn't know, not much, so apologies for that, Councillor McKinnon. We'll make sure, and then obviously, of course, you'll have a supplementary question within your once you receive your written answer as well. Thank you. Okay, so that concludes the public part of the meeting, subject to the vote on the next item. So item 17 is exclusion of the press and the public. And can I ask members to agree by voting that the press and public leave the room in accordance with Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972? Thank you. That's carried. Mr. Pearce, assume the outcome of the vote before we voted. Can we confirm that the recording